It's our turn, episode number 45, Ancient Era Games. In this episode, I welcome Annette Villa back to the show and we discuss Ancient Era themed games. Frank shares his experience with Peloponnes, the card game, and I interviewed David Orange about the Doomtown Reloaded expansion.
This is the Dice Tower Network, adding games to your wish list since 2005.
Hosting for this episode is generously provided by our fantastic patrons on patreon.com. As a thank you to our patrons, we post extra exclusive content just for them. If you'd like to help us out by pledging $1 per month or more, please visit patreon.com/OurTurnPodcast. Every dollar helps to keep this show going strong. Hi, and welcome back to Our Turn, Women on Gaming. This is Cathy, and today I am joined by Annette Villa from Netter's Place. Hi, Annette. How are you?
Hi, Cathy. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good. I'm doing well as well.
Oh, good. So we usually start out the show by talking about what we've been playing lately. What have you been able to get to the table lately?
So the big game this past month was Lisboa Fermi. So Lisboa is by Vital Lacerda, artwork by Ian O'Toole. It's an Eagle Griffins game, so it has great quality components and artwork, and everything is just great about it. But have you heard of Lisboa?
I have, and I would really like to give it a shot. I did hear that they had some drama with distribution recently.
Right. So unfortunately, there's a fire in a warehouse, so a lot of the European people that were getting their copies, they couldn't get it because of the fire. Which is kind of ironic because it's a game about an earthquake and fire that destroyed Lisbon, right? Right. And so Lisboa is about that fire and that earthquake and then the flooding that happened as well. And
that's right. There was a tsunami.
And so everything is all about rebuilding the city with the rubble from all the disaster. And so the game itself, as far as the theme, I mean, it's pretty historical, but the gameplay mechanics and how it intertwines with each other is just, it's out of this world. It's super kind of complex. It's simple because you only have a few options, but every option cascades into other options. And so you kind of end up with not just, 4 options to pick from, but maybe 16 or 32 options to pick from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And everything's intertwined too. So I've really been enjoying it and kind of discovering new strategies and new ways of playing it. I've played it a total of 3 times so far. Every time I play it, I enjoy it more and more.
I love historical games. So this is one that is high on my list to figure out how to get a copy.
Yeah, it's not an easy teach, and understanding how everything's intertwined. It'll take you a while to understand, but just I love those moments in the game where things click and then you understand. I love that moment. So in this game that happens, but it might take you a little bit longer than most games. At least it did for me.
I had that happen in a couple of games I'm going to be talking about today too.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5, what would you give this game?
A definite 5. Yeah, I really love this game. At first I didn't, but then the more I play with it, I'm just like, yes, this is a great game.
Fantastic. Glad to hear a good review of it. I know it's been much anticipated lately.
Yeah, it plays well with all counts.
Great. And is it start with 2 or does it have solo play?
It does have solo play. I haven't played it solo play yet. I've played it 2, 3, and 4 players. And it's a little bit different experience with 2 players. However, there's a way to kind of constrict it a little bit more. So there's an area that's blocked out. So you interact with your other player more often. And I haven't tried the solo game, but I assume it's just as good.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the first game that I'm going to talk about is Terraforming Mars, the Hellas and Elysium expansion. Today I want to talk about the Hellas map. In episode 44, I reviewed the Elysium map, and I thought it was okay. I thought it was a a lot like the base game map. So it didn't resonate a lot with me, but I did enjoy the awards and milestones on the Elysium map. I really like the Hellas map. It is very different from the other two, and it focused on the polar region of Mars rather than the equatorial regions like the other two maps. The polar region is different in that there are spots where the crust is very thin, so you can harvest heat from those areas when you place greenery or city tiles. There's even one spot called Hellas Planitia that looks like a giant crater where you can harvest heat from the center when you place an ocean tile on there. One tricky spot on this map is right at the pole. It allows you to place a greenery or city tile there, but you have to pay 6 extra mega credits when you go there, and you get to also place an ocean tile because you're melting the ice at the pole. I was just about to take this action when we were playing this game the other night, and unfortunately my friend Yuriko beat me to placing the last ocean tile, so I didn't get to try that out. The awards and milestones are different also from the other two maps. They operate the same way, but require different achievements to claim them. In this last game, I was able to claim the Space Baron award for having the most space symbols on the cards that I had played. I have to say, out of all three of the maps, the base game and then the two in the expansion, this one is my favorite by far. Okay. This one is very different from the other two, and it has a nice little twist that is just a little bit different from the others. I still think Terraforming Mars is a great game, regardless of which map you're playing on. This one really just resonated with me. I'm not entirely sure why this one resonated so well, but it really did. I have to give this one a 4.5 out of 5.
Nice. I have that expansion map. I just haven't played it yet, so maybe I'll start with Hellas first.
Okay, yeah. We started with Elysium, and I went, yeah, it's good. It's fun. Mm-hmm. It's okay. But this one, yeah, like I said, it just really resonated with me.
Yeah, and Terraforming Mars, I love that game. I think it was one of my favorite games last year. So I'm glad that there's going to be so many expansions for it, even though it's just a map. Just a little bit of the milestones and awards just really changes it up, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the next expansion, which is going to be called Venus Next. Mm-hmm. So I do hope that the Venus Next box is a little deeper. Same size, but a little deeper, because the Terraforming Mars box is already pushing capacity with just the regular components and the base map and the one expansion. I do have the Broken Token Organizer in there, and I really love that, but it's going to be pushing capacity when the next one comes out. So I hope the box is a little deeper.
Yeah, that's the thing with expansions. Like, I think there's like 7 proposed expansions for this game.
Oh wow, I'd heard 4.
Oh yeah, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'm super
no, it's
excited.
Fine.
But
if they've come up with more, that's great.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe there'll be one big box like a Carcassonne or something for Terraforming
Yeah, that would be
Mars.
Great. I know that fans of the game are coming out with different variants too. My friend Frank, hi Frank, he's printed out new corporation cards that are fan made. So there's all kinds of different corporations with different powers that fans of the game have come up with, and they're fun to play with too.
Cool, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So what else have you got?
So this past weekend I played Avenue, which is a small little route building game, which I tend to bring out whenever there's a lot of players. And also if everyone just wants to kind of play a little filler game to keep them entertained. So that's my go-to filler big group game. And
okay.
Yeah, so I just really like introducing that game. It's simple and easy to teach. You can just show everyone how to play it within 5 minutes and just get into the game, and everyone's involved doing their own little route building on a map. So you have these cards that you turn over one at a time, and it displays like a certain type of route, whether it's a straight line up and down, straight line, left to right, or a curved line. And so you have to draw these roads all around this grid system. And the main objective is to score these cities, and you score them by delivering these grapes to the cities. So the thing is that you don't know, out of the 6 cities, there's only 5 of them that you'll score. and you don't know which one you're going to score because the cards you turn over and it'll tell you what city you're scoring. And also you don't know when the round is going to end because the round ends whenever you turn over 4 yellow cards. And the deck of cards is consisted of gray cards and yellow cards. And those are the road cards. So eventually you just don't know when the round's going to end. You don't know what you're scoring next. And everyone's kind of like pleading for the next card to be, a certain number. And it makes it really fun and interesting. I love that game. And I definitely give that one a 4 rating. It's not something I will play all the time, but it's my go-to game for big groups.
I've heard of Avenue. I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Yeah. Well, if I ever see you, then I'll go ahead and make sure I bring it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe next time we're both at Board Game BlitzCon or something like that.
Yeah. It'll be.
All right. So next on my list of games played is Victory Through Industry. Have you had a chance to play this one yet?
No, I haven't. I don't think I've heard of it.
Okay. This was designed by my friend Joseph Fatula in 2014. I've reviewed other games designed by Joe, including Leaving Earth and Vikings on the Volga. Have you heard of either of those?
Yes, I've played both of them. I love both of them, too.
Yeah.
Leaving Earth is like my favorite, though.
Yeah, that's a great one. This game is based on the World War II effort to keep the military supplied. You're playing as a factory owner who has to get the necessary raw materials and turn them into fuel, trucks, tires, tanks, knapsacks, and other things. Like Leaving Earth, this game is a thinky, crunchy game, though not as mathy. Leaving Earth is very mathy. It plays in about 1.5 to 2 hours. You have to plan out your moves well in advance. One of the moves that you can do is acquire a government contract for a specific supply item like trucks. In order to get that contract, you have to already have produced a truck. There is a contract fulfillment marker that gets passed from player to player. And if that marker gets passed to you on your next turn, you have to fill the contracts that are in front of you before you can do anything else, including production. So it can't come to your turn and you're going to produce the trucks and then fulfill the contract. You have to fulfill the contract and then go into production. So you have to time when you acquire these contracts during the game, because if you can't fulfill your contracts, you lose them and you have to start all over again. It gets really very crunchy. Now, I played this game with just Mark and me, and while I enjoyed it a whole lot, I don't think this is the player count where this game is going to shine.
Okay.
I think it's really going to shine and really get interesting when I'm able to play it with 4 to 5 players. At higher player counts, you're going to start with fewer factories and will have to take a bit longer to build up your engine. You do this by either creating 2 resources or trading with other resources or the bank for resources that you need. This is pretty easy to do at the 2-player level because you have access to more factories or mines and oil wells and things like that. I think it's going to be much harder, a little more challenging at the 3, 4, 5 level, player level. Okay. Overall, I give this game a good solid 4 on the Our Turn rating scale. It's a good game with an interesting theme that's pretty uncommon. You don't often talk about how armies get supplies. You just talk about how to move armies around.
Right.
Like I said, I'm really looking forward to getting this back to the table with some of my friends who like games like this, and I'll report back once that happens. If you like games where you have to plan ahead of time rather than fly by the seat of your pants, then I urge you to check out Victory Through Industry.
Yeah, I always like Joe's games, and the also the component quality in his games are they're so different, like very handmade. Is that how this game is too?
This is primarily a card-based game like Leaving Earth is,
okay.
And it is a bit of a table hog because there are lots of small decks of cards representing the various components that you're trying to put together. And then the player board in front of you is also made up of these different cards. Mm-hmm. So there are cards for your oil well and your ore mine and your coal mine and your brass works and just the different things that you need in order to produce, say, a truck. You know, you need steel. Well, that comes from ore and coal. Mm-hmm. You need rubber. Well, that comes ultimately from oil, because you use the oil to create sulfur, gas, and something called naphtha. Mm-hmm. And then you use the sulfur to create the rubber to create the tires. So it's this big, long process of getting the right components in the right places at the right time in order to produce the final output. And there are government contracts for things like ore production or coal production, but there's also government contracts for producing trucks and tanks and battleships, and different things are worth different points. And we did find one little part that I'm not sure if it's a mechanism that's sort of broken in the game or if it's just that we weren't playing it quite correctly. We played it through a couple of times. The first time the game didn't really click with me until almost the end. And then I was like, oh, now I get it. And so then I was like, we need to play this again. And we played it again. I still lost, but it was even more fun the second time because I understood how everything worked.
Yeah.
In our game, there were 8 contracts dealt out. But the thing was, 5 of them were worth like 5 points. Another one was worth like 10 points, and then there was one worth 45 points.
Oh, my goodness.
And once Mark got the contract for 45 points, I didn't have a prayer because not all of the contracts, all of the other contracts together didn't add up to 45 points.
Right.
So we kind of, for the second game through, we kind of modified what came out.
Yeah.
So there were a couple at 5 points, there were a couple at 10 points, there were a couple at 35 points, and there were a couple at 45 points. So that way, you know, we both had a shot at being able to get enough contracts to win. It wasn't just going to be him producing one 45-point contract and me scrambling to do all the others kind of thing. So we need to re-examine the setup of the game to see if maybe we missed something. And I think I need to have a conversation with Joe about how that's supposed to work. But I didn't have time to do that. I did check in with him and his wife, Kate, to find out who did the artwork because it wasn't listed on BGG. The picture on the box, it's kind of a Rosie the Riveter type of picture. It's not Rosie the Riveter. That's copyrighted, apparently. Apparently, all of the U.S. war propaganda posters and things are copyrighted in the United States, but the British propaganda posters are public domain.
Oh.
And so the picture on the box is from one of the British propaganda posters during the war effort. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Victory Through Industry.
Okay. I'll have to check that one out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, a game that I recently played is Guilds of London, which is a Tasty Minstrel Games by Tony Boydell. And he's been developing this game for, I hear, about over 10 years or something like that. It's been in development for such a long time. So I recently got this game and I played it with my partner, Mitch. And it was just a 2-player game. And boy, this game is mean. So this game consists of cards. It's card play, but you have these tiles in the center of the board, which are all different guilds. And so what you're doing is you're using your cards, and it's all multi-use cards. So you can use it as money. You can use it as an action. You can use it as a banner color to place your people onto these different banner locations on the tiles. And also you can use it as, also to move people too, or to actually get new people into the guild. So with these different actions, what you're trying to do is use your actual pieces, your little people, and move them to different guilds that's scattered all over the board. And that's all randomized in the beginning. So every time you play, it's going to be a little different. And also with the cards that you get in hand are also different. So there's a lot of different variety with that game, how it plays and how it starts. But the cool thing about it is that these guilds, what you're trying to do is you're trying to place your people on it. And when you see someone placing their people on a tile, well, you want to go ahead and get on it too, because there's a reward for whoever has the most of their meeples on it, along with whoever has the second most on there too. So if someone is going towards a certain tile, well, you might as well get one person on it too, because you'll get second place anyways for a 2-player game. For like 3 or 4 players, you might not want to go there because you won't get a 3rd or 4th prize. But the thing with the 2-player that makes it mean is that you can hire these, or you can get these black meeples. And these black meeples, they're kind of used as intimidations pretty much. And so you can trade them out any color meeple on a tile by using these black meeples. So instead, you can switch out your opponent's meeple with a black meeple. So now they won't be in second place. And the black meeple is a neutral meeple, so no one will get second place.
I see.
And the thing is with the second place markers too, that sometimes the benefit for being second place is better than being first. So it also allows for people to switch out their own meeples to become second place. And that whole trading of meeples in a certain point of the game is just really brutal and really mean between players, because we're just switching each other's meeples out. And it's like, why'd you do that? And so it has a lot of interaction in it between players. It's a little bit meaner than I really like, but I really like the card play and using my cards in different types of ways.
Interesting. I'd heard of that one, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I've only played it once, but I really enjoyed it. It's just a little mean. I think next time I'll try to, I don't know. I think I'll try to have that hat on and just think about it as like, okay, it's going to be a brutal game, but you know what? I'm going to be as mean as I can.
Always play for blood
to win.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I'm not used to that with Euro games. It's just like, I just want to collect as many points as possible, more than you, and that's as mean as it gets.
All right.
So I give this a 3.5 because I still only played it once. And I thought it was a little bit meaner than I would have assumed, but I want to play it a little bit more times and see if that goes up or not. All right.
I've had that happen with some games before where at first play it was like, it's okay. And then, later it's like, wow, this is much better than I thought it was.
Yeah.
So, all right, great. All right. For my last game, I want to talk about a game I have been wanting to play for quite some time, and that is Twilight Struggle. I have heard about this game for so long, and recently at a game day, I saw my friend Richard was playing it, and unfortunately, I got there too late. He'd already started the game, so I couldn't sit down and play against him. And this is a strictly 2-player game, so it is 2-player only. This game takes place during the Cold War era, and the idea is to keep the world from blowing up, literally. You're trying to win without causing a nuclear holocaust. Having lived through a good portion of the Cold War era, this was a topic that really interested me. As I've said before, historical themes are really interesting to me. Twilight Struggle was designed by Ananda Gupta and Jason Matthews in 2005 and is published by GMT Games. The board is a map of the world during the post-World War II era up to 1989, which, by the way, was the year I graduated high school. This is a game that, like I said, is strictly 2 players. One player is playing the United States of America, and the other plays the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, or the USSR as it was known. Because I always play red when it's available, I played the Soviet Union, and Mark, who always plays blue, played the United States. This game has a unique victory points track that I've only ever seen in Seven Wonders Duel. In that game, the military marker moves back and forth along the track. If it gets to the end of the track, the invading player wins. In Twilight Struggle, there's one marker for the scoring, and it starts at 0 in the middle of the track. During scoring phases, or when the cards tell you to score, the marker moves in one direction or another. So if the Soviet player scores 10 points and the US player scores 5 points, then the marker sits on the Soviet side of the track at 5 points. The first player that gets to 20 points wins. You can also win after 10 turns. There's a final scoring. Our game only made it 4 turns, and the Soviet Union won.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's unusual that I get to beat Mark at strategy games like this. So in our game, I use the strategy of concentrating on gaining influence and control in Southeast Asia. I got lucky that 2 Asia scoring cards came up in consecutive rounds, and that enabled me to get my accomplishments scored more quickly. And the game ended, like I said, in round 4 with a Soviet victory. As I was cleaning up the game, though, I realized that I had misread the scoring cards. And I probably would not have won so quickly if we'd had actually done it right. One of the scoring cards was for Asia, which on the board is in orange. And the other one is for Southeast Asia, which is half orange and half yellow. And when we were going through the scoring process, we scored all of Asia, not just Asia and Southeast Asia. We scored both of them. So I probably would not have gotten so many points either time, if we had read the card a little more closely and only scored what we were supposed to score. We're planning a rematch, so I'll let you know how things come out. This is an excellent 2-player game, and now I can see what all the fuss is about over this game. I give it a 4.5 out of 5, and that will probably go up with further plays. And I'm definitely adding this to my list of games to add to my collection. Like I said, the copy that we were using was borrowed from my friend Richard. Hi, Richard. And I want to tell him thank you for letting us use this, because this was a lot of fun. And like I said, now I see what all the fuss is about.
How long did it take you to play?
It actually took us probably 2.5 or 3 hours. Yeah.
Okay. And you didn't play the full game, just about 4 rounds?
We only played 4 rounds. But like I said, this was a learning game, so we were having to check the rules for things quite often and to clarify things. But we had a lot of fun, and we're actually planning our next play of it. So we'll get this down pat here real quick before we have to give the game back to Richard, because I know it's one of his favorites, and I'm sure he's dying to get it back. So that's Twilight Struggle.
Oh, I'll have to try it out. I still haven't played that one yet.
It's a lot of fun. I had when I'd been planning out my 52 game challenge, there's one of the game criteria is a political game. And so that's what I'm using Twilight Struggle for, is a political game. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's what we've been playing. You've heard us referring to and rating games by a rating scale. Here's how we're using this scale. 1. Give me back the time I spent playing it. 2. Has great potential as kindling. 3. Decent with some bugs. 4. A good solid game. And 5. Buy this now.
One of the greatest civilizations of the ancient era were the Greeks. From that civilization, we got diplomacy, philosophy, mathematics, and astronomy, just to name a few advances. Today, I'd like to review a game that focuses on developing one of the ancient Grecian city-states in Peloponnes, the card game, designed by Bernd Einstein with art by Matthias Caltrien, published by Iron Games in 2015, and is currently ranked 3,224 over Board Game Geek. Now, Peloponnes, the card game, is based on the board game Peloponnes, also by the same designer and artist. Now, it simplifies the game mechanics, but it still delivers a very solid and somewhat satisfying civilization game in a small box and table footprint. Over the course of 8 rounds, you will lead one of the Grecian city-states by annexing new territories and constructing buildings while avoiding disasters. Now, you start each round by drawing a number of building and territory cards that are dependent on the number of players from a deck that's divided into 3 eras. Now, these cards represent the various buildings that can be built or territory that can be annexed, such as quarries, forests, or wheat fields. Now, each card may have a cost in the bottom left, or it may have a building cost in the upper left, which would be stone or wood. What it produces would be in the bottom right. Any population or one-time bonuses would be in the upper right. And then there's a power value or victory point that's in the bottom center over the artwork. And the cards can have any combinations of these. Now, as they're drawn, the cards are placed in either the regular row or the conquest row, depending on the number of players. In the 2-player game setup, which is what the solo game uses, you would place 2 cards in the regular row and 4 cards in the conquest row. Now, those cards in the conquest row cost 3 more coins than the rest. Otherwise, there's no difference. Now, once the cards are placed on the table, you look at the top center of the first 2 cards that were played, And you'll see a symbol that depicts one of the 5 disasters that could befall your burgeoning city-state, which would be earthquake, tempest, famine, decline, and plague. You then advance the marker on the appropriate disaster track. Now, if any disaster reaches its 3rd stage, you then resolve its effects. Though effects can be permanently losing population, or access to production from some of your territories, or even access to luxury goods for the remainder of the game. I'll explain the special thing about luxury goods in a moment. Now, those losses, as I mentioned, are for the entire game, so being able to mitigate those disasters by either acquiring cards that have 3 matching symbols or by getting those cards to specifically protect you from them can be a factor in which cards you acquire. Now, starting in Era B, one of the cards may have a supply icon in the center, which is a person and a grain symbol separated by an equal sign. If that card shows up, you then have to ensure you can feed your population by comparing the total population on all cards in your tableau against the total number of grain produced. Now, you can use any luxury goods you've earned or grain cards from your hand to make up the difference. Now, if you cannot feed your people, you then have to discard cards in your tableau equal to the amount of population you were unable to feed. Now, in the multiplayer game, starting here, each player will then bid for one of the cards, remembering that those cards in the conquest row do cost 3 more. You have to outbid or pass. Once a card has been purchased, it may then need resources to build, which can be provided either from other cards in your tableau, by discarding the appropriate cards from your hand, or by paying luxury goods. Now, if you don't have those resources immediately, you can finish paying it off next turn, but if you can't, then the card is discarded. Once it's part of your city-state, even if it's not finished, you still get its benefits, and these can be additional resources, population, or the food to feed them, extra coin cards, luxury goods, which are wild resources, or protection from disasters. Now, this is how you acquire those luxury goods. If you produce more resources from cards that are already in your tableau than what you need to build a building, you acquire that excess as luxury goods. For example, if a building needs 2 stone and your city-state produces 3, after you build the building, you gain a luxury good. Now, this can happen for both excess stone and wood for the same card if it requires both. Now, as I mentioned, these luxury goods are wild goods. They can be used as stone or wheat or wood for building buildings, for paying off supply cards, or anything that you need luxury goods for. You need to be careful, though, about the decline disaster. What decline does is it covers up 90% of your luxury good tracker, and you are no longer able to gain any more than 3 luxury goods for the remainder of the game. So in some cases, that's a very hard disaster that can fall your civilization. The last thing you do each round is you compare the total number of population that you have in your tableau, and that's how you acquire new coin cards into your hand at the end of the round, and then you reset and get ready for the next. Now, the game will continue for a total of 8 rounds, and then it ends. You complete one more supply phase, and then you count your total victory points. Now, your total victory points are either the lowest of your total population, which is the population on the cards, the ones on your luxury good counter if you've not been hit by decline, and any population cards that are in your hand at the end of the game, or the point value of all your cards, which is in that large brown circle just below the artwork. Now, the player with the most points in the end wins. Now, the solo rules were released and uploaded to Board Game Geek about a year ago. For the game setup, you would lay out cards as if you would a 2-player game, and you set up a dummy second player. Now, the dummy player takes no direct actions, but instead its city-state grows as a result of the actions you take. Instead of bidding on cards in the auction row, you buy them outright, including paying the 3 extra coins for cards in the conquest row. Now, what cards the dummy player requires depends on which row you purchase yours. If you acquired a card from the conquest row, you give the dummy the far end card from the regular row. If you didn't buy from the conquest row, the dummy player then gets that far end card plus 3 coin cards. Now, all the cards the dummy gets are placed face down because the dummy player is immune to both supply phases and disasters. You play the game over the same end rounds and count up the victory points in the same way. Now, while the solo game is still a somewhat satisfying experience, it seems that you miss out on some of the real value of the multiplayer game. The bidding for cards and the planning your alternate purchases if you don't get the one you want is sort of a key to the depth and the replayability of this game. Without having anyone to contest you for cards, your choices tend to be a lot simpler. Do I need to buy this card to prevent a possible upcoming disaster, or do I need more wheat to feed my people? Since you can buy whatever cards that need to fit your strategy and your immediate leads, you only have to worry about the cost, so there isn't as much of a need to plan out more than a turn or two ahead. There is a campaign mode in the solo version, but it's more of a gradual AI change, in that you start out with a large production advantage and the ability to buy an additional card each era, and then over the course of several games you end up with a minimal production advantage and lose the ability to purchase those extra cards. It's not a real campaign mode, but it does ramp up the difficulty, and over the course of several games it does feel more difficult. Now, on the Our Turn podcast scale, I would give Peloponnes a 3. The game is enjoyable, but I would not get this game just for the solo version. It is a good multiplayer game with solid mechanics and interesting gameplay, however. Now, next time, I'll take a break from solo board games and give my review of the Innit Game Folio system. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with me, I can be reached in several ways. I'm on Twitter, the handle @Talisian, that is T-A-L-I, S as in Sam, E-I, A-N. And I also have an Instagram account with the same name where you can find pictures of the games that I'm playing, or sometimes just cats. I also frequent the Our Turn podcast guild boards. That's guild number 2600 over at Board Game Geek. And I occasionally post on the Solitaire Games on Your Table monthly threads over on Board Game Geek as well. And remember, even if you're all alone, it doesn't mean you can't get your game on.
Today's hot topic is brought to you by BoardGameTables.com.
Sarah, have you ever tried to play a game on a table that's too big or too small?
Yes, I have. It totally takes away from the fun of the gaming experience. Have you ever had anyone spill a drink on the game table and ruin the components?
Yes, it's a horrible experience watching water, or worse yet, sugary drinks flow across your game table and game components. Have you ever been trying to learn a game and wanted to leave it set up but couldn't because the table was needed for something else, like, dinner?
Oh, yeah, it stinks only having one table for everything, playing and eating.
Well, now there's another option. BoardGameTables.com makes tables that are great for playing on and using for family meals, or just protecting your game from little hands or curious pets.
Yeah, I've heard they have lots of options for customizing, include, cup holders, drawers, card holder slots, plexiglass, wing shelves, and different kinds of table toppers.
Their tables are made out of high-quality oak, elder, cherry, or African mahogany, and stained to beautifully match other furniture that you already have in your home, with a variety of fabric colors to line the inset portion of the table. You can pick your favorite color, or color that goes with the decor you already have in your home.
I definitely got a plan to save up for one of these beauties. Hey, where can I find out more information?
Check out BoardGameTables.com. You can see what they have to offer and place your order. Don't forget to let them know you heard about it on Our Turn Women on Gaming. All right, so now we're getting into the meat of the episode, and today for our hot topic, Annette and I are going to talk to you about ancient era themed games. So just a little clarification. We were talking about this and Annette was asking me, what do you mean by ancient era? Which I thought, oh yeah, that's a good question, because you brought up, are we talking about games that have been around forever? Or are we talking about games that have a theme that takes place in an ancient era, and what's the cutoff date? So after we had talked a little bit, I decided to set the cutoff date at 1 CE, year 1 of the Common Era. So anything prior to that was fair game.
Right.
Did that make it a little easier for you?
Yeah, it was a lot easier. I was like, oh, great. I haven't played chess in a while.
And actually, you know what? I don't think chess would have fallen into this time period.
Oh.
It came up after this time period. Yeah.
Okay.
But it would have been games like, I think Go falls into that era. I think Mancala falls into that era. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a much smaller scope of games if we'd gone that route. But I do want to at some point do abstract games, which all of those would have fallen into. So we'll come back and revisit those at some point. But no, this is anything prior to the year one of the Common Era, which would include the Roman Empire. It would include ancient Egypt, ancient China. I was glad you asked about this because I had to put a limit on it because I was thinking, okay, how far back does this go? Because the first games that came to mind for me were like Yedo and Kingmaker, which are Renaissance era games. And yeah, that was a long time ago, but I don't think it quite qualifies as ancient era.
Right. So yeah, interesting that we'll do the theme game, the theme version of ancient history versus the actual ancient historical games.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't you go ahead and start us off? What have you got?
Sure. So the first one I wanted to talk to you about is the Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. So Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar is a worker placement game, and it's by Danielle Tassini and Simone Luciani. And it was published in 2012 by CGE Games. And the thing that's really interesting to me about this game is the fact that the theme is all about the Mayan history. So it's a worker placement, but thematically it's a Mayan game, and it's dealing with the Mayan calendar. So of course, calendars mean it's time. And this game is all about worker placement and incorporating the time element involved with it. And it incorporates that by pretty much using a gear system on the board. Now, I'm not sure if you've seen this game played out or expanded on a table, but it has these interesting gears on them where you get your workers and you place them to do a certain action on the board, just like any worker placement, but you place them on a gear and a gear tog. And then what happens is when you're done placing it, you'll eventually move the center gear and it'll move these other gears that are attached around it. And so the longer a worker stays at a certain location, then the more beneficial it'll be. And so in this game, what you're trying to do is you place workers in different temple regions. So you can place them in the Palenque, which is the farming region where they can get like food or wood and such. You can place them in like the Tikal, where they can develop their technologies and move up on a track system of the tech developments, will give you special abilities throughout the game. You can eventually move them up into the Chichen Itza, which is an actual temple, and you could actually give the temple gods these crystal skulls and move up these temple tracks, which will score you a lot of points at the end of the game. So the history is very much involved in the game, but it's just like another worker placement, but with time involved. So it's an interesting take on worker placement and how it applies to the actual theme.
Interesting. I haven't seen this one on the table yet, so now I'm intrigued and I want to give it a try.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful game. Like the first time I got it, I was like, wow, this is really cool because I get to turn the wheels and the cogs and everything, but it actually serves a purpose. Like it's not just there for show. It actually serves a purpose by moving all the workers on these gears at the same time.
Wow, what a neat way to do that.
Yeah, and so, and the thing is with this game, it's a worker placement, but you have the option of either placing a worker down or several workers, or you can take off your workers from the board. So I think other games use that too, like Energy Empire, or, where they do that kind of worker placement. But yeah, this is a really interesting take on that with the Mayan culture applied to it too.
Okay. Neat. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Ra. Ancient Egypt and building the pyramids and other great works seem like a logical place to go for this theme. So the first game that I want to talk about is Ra. And this game was designed by Rainer Knizia in 1999 and was reprinted in 2016. I have the reprinted version. In Ra, you are each playing as an advisor to successive pharaohs over 3 epochs. The prime mechanic of this game is an auction where you're bidding for different tiles that allow you to build different kinds of buildings. You can also invoke the power of various Egyptian gods or invoke the power of the chief god, Ra. The scoring mechanisms happen at the end of each epic, and auctions happen either when a Ra tile is drawn from the bag or when a player invokes the power of Ra. You bid on tiles using sun discs, and the art and mechanics come together very well to make a very thematic and fun game. It's been a little while since I played Ra, but I had a great time the last time we played it, and I actually tied with a friend of mine named Mike. Hi, Mike. And I actually won the tiebreaker, which is who has the highest numbered sundial or suntile. And so I was like, wow, I won this game. It's a fun game. It's got some different mechanics to it. Have you ever played this one?
No, I haven't played it. So how many players does it play? Do you know offhand? Not sure if that would be a 2-player game, would it?
I don't think it is a 2-player game. I think it is 3+, but I will look into that and have future Cathy get back to us.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a fun game and the artwork is neat. I think, if I remember right, when they announced that they were putting this out in 2016, that they had streamlined it a little bit, but I don't think it needed very much tweaking.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested in trying that out. I haven't played it yet, but I like games with a lot of auction mechanics too.
Yeah, this one has a definite auction mechanic. Invoking the power of Ra is what activates the auction portion of it. And you either do that by pulling a Ra tile from the bag, or player can say, I invoke Ra, and then they take the Ra statue and the auction starts. So it can either happen by chance or it can happen because a player decided to call for an auction, basically.
Okay.
What else have you got?
Well, the next game I wanted to talk to you about is a dry Euro. It's called Concordia, and this is probably the one game that a lot of people associate as the dry Euro Mediterranean trading game. And,
trading on the Mediterranean, one of the things that Tom Vassell says has been done enough. No, I enjoy Concordia, so go ahead.
Yeah, Concordia is a game that I really enjoy a lot. Every time I play it, I always have a great time with it. But it is about trading in the Mediterranean, but it is about the Roman culture back in the day. What I really like about this game, besides the gameplay itself, is when you first open the box, of course you have the game rules to look through, but Matt Gertz, who's the designer, he also incorporates a historical book in the whole game too, where he goes over historical information regarding like the deities of that time, the cities, the provinces, certain characters too and during that era. So it's not only a game where it could be as dry as it can be, but he kind of tries to enhance it by kind of applying these history points to the game too. So
interesting. I've never taken a look at the rule book. I've had people teach it to me. It's not a game that I own. So I didn't know that was included in the rule book. I'll take a look next time I sit down and play it.
Yeah, and he tends to do this with all his games too. So he has like Navigador and The Princess of Machu Picchu and Antique. And all these games, he always has a historical pamphlet along with it, kind of to go through the history.
I love it when game designers do that.
Yeah, but besides the historical pamphlet that comes along with the book to kind of explain what the history is all about, the game mechanics in this game is really awesome. What I really like about it is that it's a card-based game. I mean, of course there's a board and you have to move your certain pieces to different regions to kind of take over different provinces, to produce certain goods and such, and resource management and all that. But the game focus is mainly acquiring these different cards to do those actions. So it's kind of like a deck builder in a way, because everyone has the same deck of cards, but you always have them available. But once you play it, you discard it and you don't have it available. However, you can acquire new cards from the forum and then you can add it to your hand and then use those cards immediately. And eventually when you used your whole set of cards, you do a tribune action, which is a card in your hand to actually pick up all your cards. So there's a certain timing element to that, because people tend to do really awesome things whenever someone tribunes, because that way they don't copy you. And so that's another card in the game, is where they can diplomat, so they can copy the action of another player. There's a little bit of second guessing of when players are going to play those cards, because you start off with the same deck as the other player. And so it's kind of like outwitting and kind of figuring out when they're going to play their best cards and where they're going to move on the board and what they're going to produce and such. So I love this game too because of the amount of points you score. So it has these intermediate scoring. Whenever you tribune, you can score your game. And you progressively see yourself just scoring a little bit of points, and then more points. And at the very end, you're scoring over 100 points. And that's always entertaining for me. Yeah, but it's a 2013 older game, but they recently reprinted the new game with the new cover art, which doesn't look that great. but it's newer. It's a little bit more enhanced.
Yeah, the art on the box I've heard get lots of critique, but I find that the art in the game is very thematic.
Yeah,
very, very Roman for sure. And it's just a map of the Mediterranean, but the art on the cards is good, and I think that the pieces, the way the pieces are constructed and that are used in the game is very good. I don't have a problem with the art in the game, except maybe, the box could be maybe a little different to kind of explain a little better, maybe make the game seem a little more exciting.
Right. I mean, you see like a Tzolk'in box in comparison, where it has this like Aztec or Mayan character holding a skull, with these temples behind the background. Then you see this lady kind of like with some stuff in her hand trading. It's like not that very exciting, but
yeah. But as far as trading in the Mediterranean games go, I think this one's pretty good.
Yeah, this is it.
What rating would you give this game?
I would give it a definite 5, along with Tzolk'in too. I really enjoy those worker placements, those trading resource management games.
Yeah, those are great. For my next ancient game, I'm actually talking about 2 games simultaneously. For as often as Seven Wonders hits the table at my local game group, I could not leave it out. So Seven Wonders is a card drafting game designed by Antoine Bauza, where you're trying to build a civilization with the most successful wonders and advances. And like Ra, takes place over 3 ages. At the end of each age, there is scoring, and then cards from a new deck are dealt out and drafted. The wonders that are being built are from all over the world. They include the pyramids, the Great Wall of China, the city of Petra, the Colossus of Rhodes, and many others. In fact, my friend Dwayne, hi Dwayne, has printed out and laminated all of the fan variant wonders that are on BoardGameGeek.com. Some of them are real, but some of them are from myth and fantasy. So, for example, I know Asgard is one of the wonders that he has in his game. He also has heaven and hell and just a whole bunch of them that I think Atlantis is also another one. Those are all fan variants, and so those are fun to play with as well. It's always interesting to play with Dwayne's copy of this game. One area where Seven Wonders does not shine is as a 2-player game. There is a 2-player version included in the game, but I've played it and it's not that great. So to that end, Antoine Bauza teamed up with Bruno Cathala to design Seven Wonders Duel, which is strictly a 2-player version of Seven Wonders. The concepts are the same, but the mechanics have changed just a bit. You're still drafting cards in each age, but you're drafting them from a pyramid shape laid out on the table rather than passing cards back and forth. The military scoring is also a little bit different. During scoring, you get to march a shield piece 1 space along the track for each shield that you have. Your opponent moves the shield back in the other direction for each shield she has. As I mentioned earlier, until I'd played Twilight Struggle, I'd never seen this mechanic in any other game before. These games make this list because they ooze ancient world theme. And I don't know about anyone else, but I've looked up different wonders after playing these games to learn more about them and see when they were built and why they were built. I give both of these games a 5 on the OTP scale. These are games that should be in any game hobbyist collection.
Yeah, I agree with Seven Wonders Duel. I'm a big fan. I play a lot of two-player games, so Seven Wonders Duels, I think, is, if you're a two-player gamer, you should definitely have that one on your shelf because it's a really great game. I love the drafting aspect of it.
And Seven Wonders, I've heard referred to as a party game because you can play with up to 7 or 8 players. It would be what I would call a next step game. So there's like gateway games. Then I think Seven Wonders is like a next step up when you're looking to get a little deeper into the hobby and play something a little more complicated than your basic gateway game. And then, like you said, Seven Wonders Duel is just, it's perfect for couples or people who just like playing 2-player games. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think it needs to be, both games I think should be in anybody's collection.
Yeah.
The drafting mechanic is easy, and once you get the symbols down that are on the cards, which there's a slight learning curve to those when you first start playing the game, but once you've played it through a few times, it's like, oh yeah, this means this and this means this. And so it's lots of fun. And like I said, my friend Dwayne has discovered several different variants. In fact, he's even come up with one of his own and put it on Board Game Geek. We've played games where we're building 2 or 3 wonders each. And so that kind of changes the dynamic of the game and how it's played. So yeah, lots of fun.
Cool.
Lots of fun. I definitely give this one a 5.
Yeah, and then it also has the Seven Wonders Duel Pantheon too. There's an expansion.
There is, and we actually do have that, and we do enjoy playing it with that too.
Yeah, it adds a little bit more to the game. If you're a fan already, that's the next one up, and I have that too, and I really enjoy it as well.
We've only played it a couple of times. We need to get it back to the table and play it some more.
Yeah, so the next game that I also wanted to talk to you about is Imperial Settlers. So Imperial Settlers is by Ignacy, I can't say his last name, so...
Chevacek?
Yes, thank you.
Ignacy Chevacek.
But it's a Portal game. And it's a game that has not just one ancient civilization, but it has multiple different ones. So, for example, it has like barbarians. It has the Roman culture as well as the Egyptians and Japanese too. So it kind of puts them in a place where they're trying to fight to see who is the most efficient civilization, who can get the most victory points at the end of the game pretty much. But it's a card game where you're trying to build an engine and you're trying to collect cards through drafting. And you're also trying to build buildings which are on the cards themselves. And you can use the cards as several different ways. You can use them as resources. You can use them also as buildings to get those actions. And those actions will give you even more resources or special actions that you can take throughout the game. And the game is fairly simple to teach and introduce to players. And it's really enjoyable because it's super cute looking. The characters is not very it's a complete polar opposite of Concordia, where Concordia is not a cute game. But Imperial Settlers is, because you have the cute little meeples and you also have like the stone and the wood, which is also like cutely shaped, and the artwork is just great in that game too. Definitely, I would suggest trying Imperial Settlers, and the cool thing about it is that it has a lot of expansions. It expands with the Atlanteans, which is not an actual ancient culture, but it also has the Aztecs too, which I actually got that one because, I'm Mexican as well, and so I was like, oh well, there's something different. They don't have like many like Latin cultures in games. So once I saw that expansion, I was like, okay, I need the Aztecs, and they have llamas for some reason, which There's no llamas in Mexico, but
No, that would have been the Incas.
right, it was the Incas. But I think when I was looking at the little artwork on the cards, it does have like Incans instead of the Aztecs on them.
Ah,
So
okay.
it's not that different, but it does have llamas on it, which is another cute aspect to the game. So it's really enjoyable. I like it as a 2-player game. I played it with, I think, 3 players, and I didn't like it as much. It was a little too chaotic for me. But with 2 players, I enjoyed it because you can also attack your opponents and kind of take their buildings away from them, too.
Now, this game isn't related at all to Settlers of Catan, is it?
No, not at all. So,
okay.
it's all card play, and it's all resource management, too. And you only play 5 rounds, and you're trying to collect different cards and such, and try to build your empire as much as possible. So when you're playing the game, you just play as one faction. You know, you're either a barbarian or you're either an Egyptian versus, like, say, a Roman.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I initially was confused about this game because I thought it was akin to Settlers of Catan because until Mayfair, is that who used to own Catan? Until they changed the name of the game to just Catan, it used to be shortened all the time to Settlers.
Yeah.
You know, you would say, you want to play Settlers? And everybody knew you were talking about Settlers of Catan.
Right.
And then they just shortened it to just Catan. So I just assumed that Imperial Settlers was related to Settlers of Catan. So, okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out. It's a completely different game.
It's a completely different game. I like it a lot more than Settlers of Catan, but because I like card games. I like card-based games and resource management too. Mm-hmm. And there's no trading involved.
Just on a side note, did you know that Ignacy Cevicek does a podcast with Stephen Bonacore?
Oh, I heard about it, but I haven't listened to it yet.
It's called Board Games Insider, and the motto for their podcast is where too many consonants meets too many vowels.
Yep.
So I thought that was funny when you were, that came back to mind when you were having trouble pronouncing his name. So anyway, but yeah, they're part of the Dice Tower Network too, which, by the way, I understand you're a contributor on Dice Tower shows now.
Yeah, I've been with them, I believe, since April or so, and I've been participating in the board game breakfast. And
oh, fantastic!
Yeah, I do a little segment called Applied Mechanics, where I talk about the mechanisms involved in certain board games and, you know, what makes them shine and what I like about them.
Well, that's fantastic. I will definitely have to check that out. It's been a little while since I've watched Board Game Breakfast.
Nice.
All right, getting back to our ancient era games. The last one I'm going to talk about today is called Tal der König, which is German for Valley of the Kings. So it's another Egyptian-themed game. Ancient Egypt has always been a fascinating topic for me. Let me start off by saying this game is long out of print. Very long out of print. It was designed by Christian Bierer, I think that's how you pronounce it, back in 1992. I managed to pick up this gem at a flea market during a game convention, and each player is a building supervisor who's trying to get her workers to build the best pyramids and also contribute to building the central pyramid. The board is triangle shaped, and so is the box that it comes in. So it makes storing the game a little tricky, but it does catch your eye on the shelf. Each supervisor uses her workers to claim job sites and provide materials to build the individual pyramids. There's an auction at the start of each turn where you acquire blocks to build with, and you can also steal blocks from your competitors. Any materials you acquire during the turn that are not used in the building of your individual pyramids are contributed to the central pyramid, and when the central pyramid is completed, that's when the game is done.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of an interesting mechanic too. During the building phase, you have to first designate where your supervisor is going to be during the turn. And you do this by writing it down on a movement aid that uses wet erase markers. And then all players reveal simultaneously where their supervisor pieces are going to be. Movement can be influenced by how other people are moving around the board too. You have a limited number of movement. I think it's 6. You can move 6 spaces in a turn. And so that's going to influence what gets built when and where and how much progress is made. You can choose to leave your supervisor. I believe you can choose to leave your supervisor where they were the last time, but you don't want to just concentrate on just one site at a time. You need to spread out your attention to several sites. I like this game because of the unique mechanisms, the different board and the different box. It's not very often you see the triangular shape used for boards or boxes. There's an auction mechanic, and scoring is based on the color of materials used in your pyramids. The more monochromatic your structures are, the higher they score. This is a very unique game, and I'd really like to see someone like Restoration Games take a shot at republishing this one. So that is Tal der Konig from Cosmos. And I would give this game a good solid 4 out of 5.
Wow. I've never heard of this game. I'm looking at it on BGG right now. And yeah, it looks really cool. All these pyramids everywhere. It looks like at the end of the game, you kind of have this huge area with all these pyramids and all multicolored. And yeah, it kind of reminds me of Imhotep as well, with the pyramids that are built.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about talking about Imhotep, and then I remembered I had this game. I don't actually own Imhotep. It is similar in some ways to Imhotep. There's one building, and I can't remember what it is, but there's one building where you're scoring based on the color of blocks that you can see looking down from the top. So if yours get covered over by someone else's, then you don't score. So yeah, it is very interesting. It's an interesting way to score, and just the whole game is very different from anything else I've ever played. And it was the box that initially caught my eye. It's very colorful. It's a black triangular box with a very colorful Egyptian figure on the cover. And then when I pulled it out, it had a triangular board and all these blocks with it. I've never seen anything like it before until playing Imhotep.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So, I'll have to try to see if I can find it somewhere because it's out of print.
It is very out of print. Yes. Like I said, I would love to see someone like Restoration Games give this one a try. But I imagine they would probably have to go back to the standard rectangular box. Yeah. I can't imagine many game store owners would be wild about trying to put a triangular box on their shelf somewhere. Right. So anyway, any other games you want to talk about? Anything on your honorable mention list?
Honorable mentions, I guess Stone Age would also be considered an ancient culture.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Don't get much more ancient than the Stone Age.
That's a classic game. I love that game. And it's just a good gateway game that I love introducing people to when they're ready for the next stage up. And want to know, what are all these games that you play, and what is worker placement, and what is resource management? And I'm like, okay, let's play this fun little game called Stone Age, where we're a bunch of little, cave people and trying to build up our cave society and, go out into the forest and cut down trees and collect different types of goods, everywhere and build our huts. So yeah, it's very simple and unique. It's very fun, but I guess it can also be considered as an ancient culture.
Definitely. The two that I would put on my honorable mention list would be Imhotep, and then the other one would be Mexica, which I believe is related to Tzolk'in, isn't it?
I don't know. I never played Mexica.
I think that they're part of a trilogy of games, and I'm drawing a blank on what the third one is. Yeah, Mexica takes place in Tenochtitlan.
Okay.
So you're building a city on a lake, basically, and you've got canals and things like that. So I've played that game once, and it was a great game. I loved it, and looking forward to getting that one back to the table again too.
Yeah, I never played that one. I should probably own that game, actually. But definitely I need to try it.
Okay, great. So what ancient era games do you enjoy playing? Please go ahead and visit our guild number 2600 on BoardGameGeek.com. and let us know what ancient era themed games you like to play. You can put that in the thread for this episode, which is episode number 45. And I look forward to seeing what you play. Thanks for joining me again.
Yeah,
Annette.
thanks for having me on.
Future Cathy here. Before we get into this interview, I wanted to explain that the audio quality is a bit different than what we normally produce. Usually, when I do an interview, it's done via an online tool I like to use called Zencastr. The quality is usually pretty good. However, for this interview, my guest, David Orange, and I met in my new game room because an online interview was not possible. You see, David is legally deaf. We do talk about the challenges that presents to him as a gamer during the interview. Our show is still working on improving the audio quality of our in-person and field interviews. Now, on with the interview. I'll be back on the other side with a few closing notes. Enjoy! Today for the interview, I am joined by my friend, David Orange. David is a member of my gaming group and, unbeknownst to me, a game developer. He is currently in the middle of a Kickstarter campaign for an expansion for Doomtown Reloaded, now from Pinebox Entertainment. David, welcome to our turn.
Thank you, Cathy. Glad to be here.
So I did not realize that you were in game development. I guess we just never talked about what we each do for a living outside of game group.
Well, as you know, I have been playing board games in Sacramento for about 10 years. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I got into dead CCGs. I had always avoided games like Magic or Legend of the Five Rings because of the ongoing investment and commitment to keep up with that sort of a game. But somewhere along the way, I got interested in the story-driven games such as Doomtown or Legends of the Burning Sand and started collecting those and finding that people still played these dead card games. And about 3 years ago, Old Rock Entertainment Group started to bring back Doomtown under the name of Doomtown Reloaded. Since I was one of the people that had an active online presence for the old game, Deadlands Doomtown, I was approached along with some other people if we wanted to work on and contribute to Doomtown Reloaded. And because I had been doing some editing and writing on the fan websites, I was brought on as part of the story team. So in the initial effort, I helped clean up the rules and do some of the templating of the initial card, and then eventually moved into writing the stories and the fiction that supported the game. And then about last year, AG decided to not be doing their big, card games, Legends of Five Rings and Doomtown, and let those games, they sold the licenses for those games. So we formed a group to try to acquire the Doomtown license or work with Pinnacle Entertainment Group, who had gotten the license after it reverted. Long story short, we reached an agreement with Pinnacle to produce an expansion for Doomtown Reloaded. Wanted to prove our, credential, being able to, carry on the license and produce a quality product, and to, work with Pinnacle continue that, and we delivered that in the spring, and now we're in the Kickstarter to bring that expansion back to the players and keep the game going.
And so the Kickstarter is going on right now.
It is. We started in last week, and we funded, and now we're continuing to get more stretch goals and bring more players into the fold to enjoy Doomtown.
Fantastic. And it goes until September 25th?
Yes, it does. So, there's about 1 week left and plenty of time for people to get in and join us with Doomtown.
Okay, great. So what's new in this expansion?
Okay, for people that have played Doomtown before, this is a direct continuation. The cards that we're producing for There Comes a Reckoning, name of our expansion, are 100% compatible with AG's cards. They were play tested specifically with the AG cards and balanced accordingly. What is new is we have cards that are called Servitors. one of the things that we wanted to do with Pinnacle, and they were enthusiastic about, is to bring the Deadlands role-playing characters into the game of Doomtown. And we needed to figure out a way to do that. And in the set, you'll see, characters from Deadlands role-playing as cards in Doomtown. But the main feature that we did is something that we called the servitors. And in Deadlands role-playing, the main architects of evil and chaos and destruction are the Reckoners, which are basically the four horsemen of famine, war, pestilence, and death. And they're largely off theme. But the main agents of those Reckoners are called the Servitors, and they're basically demigods. And again, they each serve one. We have Ezekiah Grimm, with the Servitor of Pestilence, and he's based out of the city of Los Angeles, which is an analog to Los Angeles. We have Darius Hellstrom, the mad scientist, based out of the city of Gloom, around Salt Lake City, and he serves Pestilence. He's famine, he's Pestilence. Jasper Stone is the agent of death. It's based around Tombstone in the southwest. And the fourth one is going to be Raven, who's around these parts in the Great Maze, who serve war. And the problem is the regular characters are balanced to play against each other. And each of these servitors, as they're called in Deadlands, is essentially a demigod, nearly immortal. In the source books, when you kill them, they come back. So how do you put a demigod in balance into a card game? And the mechanic that we came up with is that they attach to the outfit at the start of the game. They cost some money to bring into play, and they have some restrictions or handicaps. But for all of that, the outfit gains a powerful ability if they build the deck can support that mission and achieve their ends. The other thing that comes out of the role-playing game is that it's designed that the player characters are generally good, trying to defeat evil. And occasionally a character can go rogue and become a bad guy, but that's generally punished. And the player has to make that decision. In the backstory for each of these servitors of the Reckoners is that they were originally humans, but they decided, for whatever reason, to serve, the Reckoners of evil. So the tagline of Deadlands, evil is a choice. These servitors made the choice to be evil. And if a player character in Deadlands, goes rogue, they deviated from the accepted norms and they made a choice. We balance these servitors so that you don't have to play that the decks that you build can still win and compete against other decks if they don't have a servitor, but they can be very powerful if you do. So the player makes the decision if they're going to have a servitor in their deck and which one. So that whole mechanic of even just selecting a servitor or not, evil is a choice. And everything just flows from that and how the cards were designed to really carry out that overarching theme of the Deadlands role-playing game. And we're very excited about being able to marry the theme and the mechanics and some more, very crucial cards for our expansion.
Okay, great. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Doomtown Reloaded, the card game, it's akin to Magic or Legends of the Five Rings in that it's a sort of a collectible card game, right? Or a living card game, one of those?
Yes, that is a good example. And it does have some parallels with Legends of the Five Rings, which was formerly produced by AG as well. And again, the difference between this type of game, which we call an expandable card game, ECG, is that even though you have expansions that you buy to can keep up with the game and build your collection, the cards are fixed quantities. So they come in a play set of 4, the maximum of a card you can have in a deck, and each package will have that same set of cards. So There Comes a Reckoning has 45 different cards, in sets of 4 for a total of 180 cards in that particular set. But every player gets the same set of cards that can be added to their existing Doomtown collection. And I would like to add that if you're just getting into Doomtown, the original stock is available as add-ons to the Kickstarter, and people can get in from the ground floor at a discounted rate. It has a full set of cards to play with in addition to the expansion we're producing.
Okay, that's great. Now, before we started recording, you were showing me the game and you were explaining to me that this isn't necessarily a shoot 'em out type game. This is more of an area control game, and I think that's probably a little different from something like Magic, right?
Correct, because with Magic, where you play cards and combinations and, the deck, has certain function, there really isn't a spatial component. With Doomtown, every player has a 52-card deck that they can build up, and the spades of the deck are the characters, the diamonds are the properties, the hearts are the goods like, shotguns or horses or spells that you can cast, and clubs are the action. So in order to get an economy to pay for things, you have to play, deeds or cards to the table that the character can physically move to. And then, so as you move to them, you can take properties over or you can defend them. So it becomes an area control where you're trying to, get control of the town or keep the other player from taking it over. I'll give you some links to some demos that'll demonstrate that the player can actually see the game being played.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll include those in our show notes for sure. That'd be great. I'm looking at the art here. Who did the art for the cards?
Generally, any card game, the company will contract with artists to create art, and that'll give the look and feel. For Doomtown, it's very much, Western town of different types of characters. But there comes a reckoning, since we're trying to introduce the world of Deadlands, the town of Gomorrah, where Doomtown is set. We use the art from the role-playing game as the art for There Comes a Reckoning. For the servitors that I just showed you, the art comes from the cover of the source books. The rest of the cards that we have, come from existing AEG art. So, again, we've got various things here. These are artworks that were originally used in the role-playing game that we're able to use on some of our cards now. And going forward, it'll probably be a mix of Deadlands art plus originally commissioned art. But for now, we really wanted to show off the best that Deadlands had to offer. So we worked with Pinnacle to get, the art that they used in their role-playing and use that for the art of the cards. The spoiler list that will be linked will have examples of the cards that we're issuing, and I'm sure the role players will recognize some of that artwork from the campaign that they run.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really liking this. This is really good art, and the cards are very clear text on them, kind of a parchment type background to it. Very nice looking cards. Wow, very cool. So this goes until September 25th, and we will definitely have the links in the show notes. So one other thing I wanted to ask you about, David, people may notice that your speech is a little bit different, and that's because you're deaf. Right?
No, legally deaf and hard of hearing.
Okay. And you have a cochlear implant.
Yes,
that helps you hear.
I grew up with hearing aids, and about 5 years ago, I received a cochlear implant.
Oh, really? Only 5 years ago? Okay.
Yeah.
So how has being hard of hearing impacted your ability to play games? Is it made it a little tricky?
Well, growing up, it might not surprise you to learn that I was the world's worst Marco Polo player. So that sort of thing didn't really work for me.
You couldn't wear the hearing aids in the swimming pool, right?
Right, exactly. Nowadays, the implant processor does have a waterproof skin that I can use, and the newest models they're testing are fully waterproof.
Oh, nice.
So it's about 50 years too late for me. But in terms of current board gaming, it does have some limitations. I speech read, and when I look at people, I do fine. So games like Settlers of Catan or Modern Art, where you have ongoing live auctions as part of the game, are difficult because the conversation moves too fast for me to keep up and to try to get in a bid in Settlers. And by the time I figured it out, somebody's already gotten the bid.
Right.
So that's always been a challenge in those games I tend to avoid because I know that it's one extra step for me.
Okay.
So it's not that I can't play Settlers, it's just there are better games for me to play.
Sure.
A game like Captain Sonar is a popular game that play where you're doing real time, command and control of the submarine. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of back and forth conversation on both sides of the board. Again, that's not something I'm well suited for.
Okay.
In terms of actually playing games, again, I do a lot of speech reading. So face-to-face, I do fine. And since the gamers I play with are just wonderful people, they've been understanding, and they realize, okay, you have to look at David. And if David does something stupid and foolish, maybe he missed a rule. And, you work that out. So that's the real advantage for me of being in a game group with regular people that know me. However, I do like to go to conventions like KulaCon or Gen Con, and in those cases, if I'm at a new group of people, no, I don't hear, and just make sure they understand they need to look at me.
Okay.
Same thing, since I do hosting and demos at the conventions, I do let people know, if I have a hard time, just, explain, or just write it down for me or type it out on the phone, and I'll make sure the questions are answered.
Mm-hmm.
Gen Con has been an interesting experience. When Doomtown came out, I was on the AG demo team on the floor, and that's thousands of people, and it's just an absolute roar in the background, and you really have to focus. So, again, the more you know the game, the better you can explain it and just work with people one-on-one. This last Gen Con that I went to just about a month ago, my processor was due for an upgrade, and the old one was starting to go out. It went out on me in the middle of Gen Con.
Oh, no.
And I was doing demos. So what happened is I basically just went into 100% speech reading mode. And actually did well, and it turns out, without all the background, it was in a way easier for me to concentrate and focus and work with the person and do the demo and explain Doomtown to them.
Oh wow! So
I got through that, and now I have my new processor and everything hunky dory again.
Wow.
One interesting fun fact: when my daughter was very young and she was in her car seat, I was having trouble understanding her. So reflexively, I just put up the rear view mirror, and all of a sudden, I can understand her. And it turns out I can speech read in a mirror.
Oh, wow.
Which is odd because mirrors are reverse images. And I haven't actually, seen anything or heard anything in my audio, which is a surprise. But what seems to have happened is that even though words are asymmetrical, the actual sounds and lip motions have enough symmetry that you can see that in the mirror. So I can actually, speech read, in a mirror.
Neat. That's different. I hadn't thought about trying to speech read in a mirror before. So yeah, that's totally outside my experience, other than trying to GM a role-playing game in the middle of a convention is hard because you're trying to lean in and hear people, but you're able to actually read their lips and understand what they're saying.
I was actually demoing the Doomtown Reloaded game and showing off our servitors to people. In between the tournament matches, they would come and do, demos with me. So, I would have a deck with the servitor in there and demonstrate how that worked for them and play a game against whatever deck they had. And if they beat me, which is easy to do. They would win the servitor. I'd give them the card, for playing me or, beating me.
Neat. Wow. Yeah, I know that I have a hard enough time hearing people at conventions because the noise is so loud. Even at small conventions, it can get pretty noisy. So, wow, you just learned to adapt and work your way around it.
Yeah.
And you just need people to be understanding about explaining the rules to you.
Yeah, understanding goes a long way. And again, gamers are just fantastic people.
Yes, they are.
And part of being Pine Box, I don't play competitively anymore because part of the company, and that was the case when I was with AEG. I like playing demos and I like meeting people. I like seeing how they're playing the game and what the game does for them and what their decks are doing. And that gives us information of what the players like and what the players would like to see in the game.
Okay. So once this Kickstarter is over, what's the next big project for you?
Well, certainly we'll hand off to the printers and the game will come out. And hopefully it'll be delivered in March. And we'll have a series of events to go along with that. In the meanwhile, as part of the pledge for the Kickstarter, players will get PDF copies of the card so they can actually begin to play with those.
Oh, neat.
Pine Box will be at PAX Unplugged in Philadelphia in November. And we're going to have one of our first storyline events there for players, including the role players, to interact with the game and contribute to the ongoing storyline.
Okay, so you'll be working on new storylines for Doomtown Reloaded.
Right, and again, working with Pinnacle to cross over that where we bring in more Deadland, but some of the Deadlands characters and the storyline events will start influencing the Deadland storylines as well. And of course, being successful, we are hoping to continue to make Doomtown set and continue the game as we and the players have wished for.
Okay. And now I checked out the Kickstarter when you sent me the link the other day, and it has already funded. So this is going forward.
Yes.
Period. So if you're interested in getting in on this expansion, you need to go to Kickstarter and look up Doomtown Reloaded before September 25th, 2017. All right. And we will have links in our show notes to the Kickstarter. And also, how can people reach you online?
Okay, through pineboxentertainment.com and also on Facebook through the group Pinebox Entertainment and Doomtown Reloaded.
Okay, we will have links to those in the show notes too. So thank you so much for coming on to Our Turn, David.
Thank you, Kathy.
Future Kathy here again with a few follow-up notes. David messaged me after we were done and he had left to say that he and his team are aware of and do work towards diversity and inclusivity in their characters. Key characters, including 2 faction leaders, are female. Additionally, they've also added characters who are people of color and in a couple of cases, children. The overall storyline is PG-13 for screen violence and deaths, but non-sexual, non-gender oriented. He also emphasized that this was more of an area control and economic game rather than a shoot-'em-up style game. Again, you can find links to the Kickstarter and other Doomtown Reloaded resources in the show notes, which are at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 45.
Hey everyone, this is Sarah. If you're curious on how you can support the show, here are some ideas. If you'd like to support us financially, you can support us through Patreon at www.patreon.com/ourturnpodcast. We've switched from pay per episode to pay per month. We also have a donation button on the site for anyone wanting to do a one-time donation. We have a lot of plans to improve our audio and expand the content we provide, but we need help to do so. However, we totally understand that not everyone has the funds to support us. Thankfully, there are many non-monetary and important ways to help us. Tell a friend about the show. Really, one of the best ways to support us is to spread the word to people you know. Commenting on our posts, either on the website, Facebook, Twitter, or the Board Game Geek Guild, are very helpful for us to know what listeners think and want from our show. If you think of anyone you'd like us to interview, please let us know. We'd also appreciate any shares of our posts on social media. Take pics of you playing games and post them to any of our social media avenues. We'd love to know what you're playing and maybe take a look at playing those games too. Please call our voicemail number at 916-426-2873 and leave a message or a show intro or promo. For example, you could say, "This is Sarah and it's our turn," or "This is Sarah and you're listening to Our Turn Women on Gaming." Of course, replace Sarah with your name. So there's many ways to support us, and we'd appreciate any and all of them. Thanks for listening.
All right, so now we're winding down the show, and at this point, we usually talk about what we're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks. So, Annette, what have you got going on?
Yeah, so I have my family. I have my grandmother and her sister, my aunt, coming over to San Francisco to visit me. And it's going to be my aunt's first time here, and they're going to stay with me. So I'm going to whip out all these board games and try to have them play with me. So I'm really looking forward. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The thing is that they don't speak English. So I'm going to try to teach them some board games, but hopefully I can find some that are non-language based.
Okay. Where do they live?
Well, my aunt, she lives in Mexico, and my grandmother, she lives in Southern California in LA.
Okay. Well, that should be lots of fun.
Yeah.
So Sarah and I are working on a project for the upcoming Conquest Avalon here in Sacramento. And so we are working with our team to put something together for that event. So we'll have more details as that gets a little closer. Stay tuned for that. And then Mark and I are getting settled into our new place. We're excited to have a room dedicated to gaming. And we're looking forward to having some friends over to play games on a regular game night, including Frank. Actually, we moved into an apartment complex that happens to be right next door to the apartment complex where Frank lives. So that's kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, we're excited to have him come over and our other friends, Kim and John, come over. Hi, guys. And setting up a regular weekly game night to crank out some of these games that are sitting on my unplayed game shelf. Mark and I decided that we are no longer going to call our shelf that contains our unplayed games our shelf of shame. That's just too negative. So Mark came up with a new name for it. It's called the Game Space of Temporal Insufficiency.
I like that.
So, yeah, that we're going to try and whittle down some of our games on the game space of temporal insufficiency and get those cranked out.
Yeah, I have several shelves of that are a little embarrassing, but I don't know. I don't see it as a shameful shelf. I look at it as something to look forward to.
Exactly. There's no point in making it something negative. Mm-hmm. All right. So where can people find you online, Annette, if they want to connect with you?
Well, you could find me online as Netters Plays. And you could find me, for example, on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube and Facebook. I've been participating with the Dice Tower on their board game breakfast show, too. So you could find me there, and I do a segment called Applied Mechanics. And then on my channel, I just do small little overviews, not necessarily reviews, but overviews of games and go over my first impressions of them, too. But you could pretty much find me anywhere on the internet as Netters Plays.
Okay, great. And you can find me online. I run the Our Turn Podcast Twitter account. And I also am the guild master on our Board Game Geek Guild number 2600. And we also have a Facebook page. Sarah runs that. So you can find that at facebook.com/OurTurnPodcast. And of course, you can also connect with us through our own website, which is ourturnpodcast.com. And you can find the show notes there and connect with us there. It's a blog format, so you can leave comments if you like. And we love hearing from people online. So thanks for joining me again, Annette. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And it's always more fun to have someone to talk to.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me again. I love doing this.
Great. Awesome. So until next time, that was our turn. Now it's yours. Thank you for listening. This episode was recorded on September 4th, 2017, and is written and produced by Kathy Ford and Sarah Reed with assistance from Annette Villa, David Orange, Frank Vicari, and Mark Ford. We want and encourage your questions, comments, and feedback. Please call 916-426-2873 and leave us a short voicemail or send an email to feedback@ourturnpodcast.com. Our theme music was composed by Adriana Crickle. Please check out our show notes to learn more about the composers featured in this episode. The material in this episode is copyrighted under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. If you want to learn more about the games discussed in this episode, please visit our website at ourturnpodcast.com/episode 45. You can find a list of the games along with links to their listing on BoardGameGeek.com. We are proud members of the Dice Tower Network. You can find out about other shows in the network like Blue Peg, Pink Peg, The Snakes Cast, or the Party Game Cast by going to dicetowernetwork.com. Thank you for your support. If you like what you heard, please tell your friends about us.